God we will follow.
Hi, welcome to Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. I am Ken Coughlin. We have a really important episode for you today. We're taking a little bit more of a serious turn. Let me tell you a little bit about what the show is going to be about today, and then I'll turn things over to our guests here to introduce themselves. We here at Trinity have been spending the last several months trying to basically focusing more on emergency preparedness. We live in an era of active shooters, and one of the things I'll ask these gentlemen here in a minute is maybe to define that term so we know we're all talking about the same thing. But I'm sure if you watch the news, you can't escape it. We've seen a number of situations where there have been active shootings reported. We've had two in recent past here in Harford County, where we're based in the last year, three in Maryland. We had one in Annapolis just a few months ago as well. It's not too far from us. And so it's something that churches can't ignore. And we here at Trinity, again, have been trying to get focused on that and do our own preparedness for that. But we wanted to have spend a little time today talking about the issue to let people out there know a little bit about some of the things that maybe you're not thinking of and what you should be doing. Obviously, primarily we're focusing on churches, but this is obviously a problem that affects any large gathering, even beyond churches as well. So we have our panel, I'll call them experts because compared to me they are, on the subject here today to give us a little bit of insight about what things people might not be thinking of and what we should be doing about it. So why don't we just start out by just going down the line and ask you to tell us a little bit about who you are and tell us something about yourself.
My name is Sergeant Robert Burgess. I work for the Harford County Sheriff's Office, and I've been employed there for almost 23 years now.
And I'm Mark Koger. I'm the Operations Director here at Trinity Lutheran and try to head up and help out with our security team here at church.
Yeah, you're the one that I've been primarily reporting to and the stuff that I've been doing on this part. So he's been kind of my guiding light, so to speak. So, well, thank you both for coming on today to talk about this. Let me just throw things out there for starters a little bit about one problem I think we have in the world today, with the news especially, is it's almost like there's a separation where we see something on our television screen just like we see, the latest episode of whatever TV show we're watching, and somehow it seems disconnected, not real, when you see it in that format. And so in order to really impress upon people that no, this really is something that you need to be thinking about, what would you say to people out there?
I agree with you. I think unfortunately, I think it desensitizes a lot of people. If you remember when they first started, people were like, I can't believe this happened, it's horrible, and it just seems like the frequency is growing, and it just seems like people, oh, well, here's another one. And I think actually the public in general, I think, is waking up and realizing it can happen in my backyard.
Well, especially for us, because it has happened
like you said,
twice in our backyard.
Twice within a year.
Yeah.
Within a year, we've had two in this county. And I think that's what wakes people up, realizing that this can really happen here. It can happen anywhere.
Yeah, being sensitive to your area, knowing that it has happened in your backyard, just as Robin mentioned, it does wake you up. You realize that, wow, my community isn't quite as safe as I thought it would be, or you just don't know that this could happen to me or to one of my loved ones. So I think people are starting to realize that it's an important issue.
I hope so, especially, I'm sure there might be some people watching out there that it hasn't happened in their backyard, but that doesn't mean it's not going to. Harford County, do you think this is like a really safe county? I would never, I got to be honest, until the first one happened a year ago, and then we just had one a few weeks back, I would never have thought that this was going to happen here. I confess, I would have been one of those people. And yet it does.
And it can happen anywhere. It could be the smallest rural community. It could be in a large populated city. It happens anywhere and everywhere.
I agree. Back, as you know, in 2016, we had two deputies who were killed. Sort of a similar incident.
Mm-hmm.
He was on a rampage. And I think that's what woke up a lot of our deputies. Like you said, this is intense. You didn't think that would happen, and it opened up a lot of people's eyes. It can happen anywhere, no matter where you live.
So if you get nothing else out of this episode, if you live in a community where something like this hasn't happened, take it from those of us that live in a community where it has. Don't wait to get prepared. And you shouldn't you shouldn't need something like this to happen for you to understand just how serious of an issue it is.
Correct. Yep.
So let me ask you this question then: what is an active shooter?
Well, an active shooter is someone who is determined to kill as many people as they possibly can in a short amount of time. And they're determined at all costs. They are well prepared. They're methodical in their attempt to do this. And basically that's what it is.
And I believe most of the time they pick soft targets, churches, schools, colleges, places where they perceive that there's no threat to them to stop them.
Right.
They can fulfill their goal with little to no anyone trying to stop them.
So one of the objectives is to not make yourself into a soft target.
Exactly.
Correct, I would guess. Yeah, one of the things that I know in what I've learned over the past several months about this is like what you were saying, Mark, is that their goal is to kill as many people as possible, and they are prepared. They may not care who they kill, although I think there have been maybe a few instances where there's been someone that they specifically are targeting, but lots of times in these events, they may not care who they kill, but their goal is to kill as many people as possible. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there have been instances where they have done planning in advance. I mean, they've scouted someplace out.
Yes. For example, like the subject in Las Vegas, he didn't care who he killed. He just wanted to kill as many people as he could, as we could all see by the newscast and the video from afterwards. It was random.
But he clearly had a plan. I think that's a really good example.
Yes.
If you look at what they found in his room and everything like that.
Yes.
Well, even in the Virginia Tech incident, the gentleman went around and locked all the doors so that no one could get in to save lives, or no one could get out. So it was definitely well planned.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, you hear these things and people think of them as random, and it's both random and not random. I mean, it's random as far as who's actually being killed, but the planning itself is not. They're well thought out, and so if you in response don't have a well thought out plan, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
And it takes time for them to plan, because they've even gone to the extent of bringing a particular bag every day to work, so people get used to seeing that particular bag. And in the meantime, they're bringing in weapons or things to harm people.
Stockpiling weapons. And
you're used to it, and you don't think anything of it.
I'm going to throw this question out to Mark here, specifically. This is a tough one. I didn't tell you this one was coming, but it was something you just said made me think of it. And it's a hard question for the Christian community out there. Sure. All right. You mentioned that you got people that are bringing the same bag to work. Well, let's talk about churches as a soft target for a minute. Our whole mission is to have our doors open, to welcome new people. But then again, you could have somebody who's doing that, who's maybe bringing something every week to church so you'll get used to it. Right. And it is being planned out ahead of time. How do we strike that balance?
It's not easy. It's very tough. And even the FBI said that the churches are probably the softest target for an active shooter. And we're really behind the eight ball on trying to prepare churches for this particular thing. But the key is, and they found this in most instances, it's the relationship you have with that particular person who's struggling. A lot of time it's mental illness. And the signs aren't shown early enough by people if they're not sharing to see the signs of mental illness so that they can prevent something like that happening. That's the key. So, you see a stranger coming in or walking by and you see them every day and you don't think anything of it. But to have a relationship with people and to know who they are and what they're about, it really goes a long way in preventing some of these instances from happening.
Well, that's interesting, because that's something that we're supposed to be doing as Christians anyway.
Correct.
And so that if anything, here's another reason why you don't just shake some new person's hand and go back to your regular pew and never talk to them.
Right.
We're supposed to be building relationships.
Correct.
And so that's another factor. So let me shift gears a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about what we should be thinking of doing, and I'm going to start this out with a story I'm not going to name names, but I was in another church's sanctuary recently, and I mentioned this to you guys off the air before we started. And I noticed when I was in the sanctuary that there was, the main entrance in the back, which is probably where everybody was used to coming in and coming out. And I am sure, due to fire code, that there was at least one other exit from that sanctuary, okay? And while there were some other doors, like one I knew just went into another room just because I could see into it. Now, whether there was another exit on the other side of that room, I don't know. But it didn't seem to be clearly marked. And I was sitting there wondering, after going through learning all the stuff I have over the last few months. Now I'm at a point where I'm like, everywhere I go, I'm kind of looking for this stuff. And I started wondering, I wonder how many people in their congregation actually know where the exits are. Right. And so that's just one example, but things like that. What kind of things would you say people in churches in particular need to be thinking of to prepare for something like this?
What I would suggest is a church, business, any establishment, when you enter, take a couple seconds, just look at your surroundings, see where the exits are, see an avenue that you can escape if something does happen. It only takes a few seconds, and seat yourself in an area that you have good vantage point, if you can.
And we have to be responsible for something that could happen by knowing just what Rob said about knowing your surroundings, knowing where the exits are. Notice people coming and going. You need to really be alert to that in this day and age, unfortunately, but you do have to be aware of those things.
So how should people respond? Let's assume that now we have a church out there that has become a target, okay, and an incident is actually happening there, all right? The tendency, I guess, is full-out panic at that point in time. So at least just generally, we could have a little bit of conversation about what should people do in that scenario. If you're sitting in church, if you're sitting in your place of business, wherever it may be, and an active shooter gets into the building, what do you do?
Did you want me to say?
Your part is good, Rob.
What we teach is if you're able to exit the building safely, if it's not crossing the paths with the shooter or the assailant or the suspect, if you're able to exit the building safely through an exit nowhere near that person, I would do that. If it comes to the point where you are trapped, where you can't exit the building, seek cover, hide, and most importantly, silence your cell phone. Because we all know how that works.
Yeah, even the vibration mode. That's something people don't think of. It's like even that vibrate, you think, oh, my phone's set to vibrate. I do that in court all the time because I'm a lawyer.
Yes.
And it's like, and in court, that's usually okay. They'll let you get away with that.
But we all know as soon as the most inopportune time, your phone will go off.
Yeah. Yes. And they'll be able to hear that.
Yes, definitely.
Hear it, even if it's just vibration mode.
They may have passed the room and moving on, and they hear the cell phone. Well, everybody knows. Everyone has their cell phone with them.
Yeah. Right.
So they know where there's a phone, there's a person.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, of course, what Rob probably would have mentioned was about fight. If you have to really defend yourself, you need to commit to defending yourself at all costs, knowing that whatever outcome there is, it's going to be. But you could possibly save lives by just, attacking the assailant.
Let me go into those. You guys kind of mentioned three things: running, getting out if you can, taking cover, hiding if you can't,
right.
And then if worst comes to worst, being prepared to fight. I want to kind of look at those three more specifically here. One thing you mentioned, Rob, I thought was very important, is getting out of the building if you can do so without crossing paths with the shooter.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that I think in a lot of churches, we have this main entrance that we're used to entering the sanctuary from, that very likely will be where the shooter's coming from too. Mm-hmm. And so lots of times, that, like you were saying, when you enter a room, be aware of your surroundings. One thing that I think churches can do is just training their congregation of, how do you get out of here? Mm-hmm. How can you get out of here?
And that would be a good point. Everybody has fire drills. Have a drill for that. The more repetition that you have doing something, it becomes more natural to do. So if you train on the different exits and trying them and get them into people's a routine of how to do it, I think it would help.
Yeah, and if you're in a congregation where they haven't trained you that, then they do what you were saying. Next time you walk into your sanctuary, next time you walk into a classroom, wherever you might be doing, next time you walk into your place of work, start paying attention.
Evaluate. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Start paying attention.
Absolutely.
So do you have anything else you wanted to add? You're nodding a lot, I didn't know if you...
No, but Rob's, he's the expert. He's faced this every day. He's out in the field.
No, not really.
But, I think... The FBI, for example, are trying to recognize, because I think they're usually the ones that head up mass shooting incidences. Yes. And they're still learning. They've been doing it for a number of years, of course. And there's nothing consistent about the particular person who is an active shooter. It varies. There's no ethnic, continuity or anything like that. It's random. So they're still learning today. But the key thing is, running and getting away as fast as you can. Lives are saved by, if you have to hide, you are silent and quiet, and those rooms are locked. All the incidences where people have been locked in a room, there's no casualties, which is amazing. And that was just recently reported, that if you're able to get in a safe locked room, the assailant is not going to sit and try to pull the door apart or shoot the lock off. He's going to move on to the next room. So that's really a good thing. And of course, fighting. None of us would want to have to consider confronting someone with a gun. But, God willing, if you had to,
Yes.
you'd have the courage to do it. You need to do it.
You hear some of these stories of some of the active shooters where the person comes in and they just right down the line and shoot 50 people, and you think those 50 people could have got together and taken this person.
Yeah.
They should have taken him out.
But that's what we talked about before. Panic sets in. If you don't know, if you don't have a plan ahead of time, if you haven't planned this out and thought this through, then you're just going to panic because you're not going to know what to do.
And by distracting a shooter, too, they're not going to have the best aim at their target, too, that way. So if you're able to distract or pull them away, or you're a moving target, it's going to be a lot harder for them to hit. So the key is to really to get them out of the scenario. Just take them down as fast as you can.
And speaking of, you mentioned earlier, Sergeant, about taking note of your surroundings for knowing where the exits are. Another thing you can do is take note of your surroundings for what can be used as a weapon.
Definitely.
There's lots of things you might not even think of. Grab a fire extinguisher.
Anything.
Anything could be a weapon.
Yeah.
Anything.
The Word of God can be a weapon. Throw a Bible at them.
You're right.
When you're fighting for your life,
Yes,
Exactly.
absolutely.
you do what you have to do.
And also, it's the quantity of people. One or two people might be hard to take down, but if you have 15 people in a prayer group or at a meeting, if one or two people are injured, you still got 13 or 12 more people to confront this person, and large quantities are going to take him down.
I do want to make sure we're emphasizing that this is third on the list of options. So
Correct.
Don't start
Yes.
feeling like gung ho. Okay, there's so many of us. We're taking this guy down.
yeah.
If you can get out, get out.
That is a last resort.
Right.
That's a
Absolutely.
last resort.
And if you can hide. And one thing I don't know if we mentioned, like you mentioned that passing you by. There's ways you can you want to lock the door and not make any noise. Lights, turn them off. You want to make it look like that room is vacant.
Right. Get out of the view of the window if there's a window in the door.
Right.
And call 911 immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to get the authorities notified immediately, so you can start that way.
Yeah.
And the response time has increased greatly since active shooters have become more popular. They've gotten it down from like 7 to 8 minutes down to 5 minutes in many cases, and it's just extremely.
But that response time doesn't start until someone tells them that something's going on.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to know what's going on.
It was really, and I have to say, because I want to say the shooting incident we had here in Harford County a couple of weeks back, I want to say it was like within 5 minutes. So they said that they were on the scene.
Probably less than that,
right?
I don't know the exact time, but it wasn't very long.
Right. Yeah.
It was really, really short.
But I will tell you, and all the more reason to have the plan, because if you really wanted to emphasize how long 5 minutes, it's really quick to get from one destination to another. But if you're there involved in that shooting, I do this sometimes as a lawyer when somebody thinks like 30 seconds is just a blink of an eye. I'll just sit there, I'll be silent for 30 seconds and stare at them. And
It's a long time.
It's a long
It is a
time.
long time.
Yes.
Now imagine that for 5 minutes.
5 minutes is an eternity.
Right. And so you've
really
got to have a plan so that you can survive for those 5 minutes.
It seems that most of the time, once the incident occurs, by the time law enforcement gets there, it's pretty much over.
It is.
Let me ask you one last question here, and then we'll wrap things up, because you mentioned once law enforcement gets there. All right. What is law enforcement's job when they get there? And as far as how should people, if they come into contact with law enforcement, how should they behave?
The primary job for law enforcement when they arrive on an active shooter scene is stop the violence.
Right.
Stop the shooters. Stop the killing. Stop what's going on. If a civilian encounters law enforcement, do what you're told. You might not like what you're being told to do. Get your hands up. They might handcuff you. They might secure you in a certain way.
They don't know you're
They don't
not
know
the shooter.
you. Exactly. They don't know what's going on. They're being thrown into a volatile situation. They know is there's people being hurt. And it'll be sorted out in the end. It will be sorted out in the end. Just do what you're instructed to do.
And that's an important factor. It'll be sorted out in the end. So many people don't, I think that through. It's just kind of like, oh, no, why? I'm not doing anything wrong. Why are you telling me to do this? It's like, well, they don't know that right now. Just do what you're told. Let's all work together to save lives.
Right.
Yes.
That's the important thing. Anything I haven't mentioned or we haven't gotten in here that you guys wanted to pitch in?
Just to add to what we just said about even if you're injured, know that those law enforcement, they're in there to take the shooter down. So, if there's wounded, they're not going to tend to them first. They know they need to keep the violence,
Yes.
eliminated.
The primary job for law enforcement is to stop the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
The second is deal with the injured.
And so help is going to get there.
It's going to get there,
Right.
definitely.
You just put first things first.
Yep.
We got to stop.
Got to stop the violence first.
Stop the violence first.
And then also we talked about law enforcement and the great job that these guys do and getting there on site. Rob had mentioned that most of the incidences are over by the time they get there. That's all the more important for you to be aware of your surroundings, to know what could happen, and when it does happen, what you're able to do. You need to be able to react the proper way.
Yeah. So, I know this has been really short. Thank you guys both for all the insights here. I know there's only so much we can cover in about 20, 25 minutes here. And this was certainly not meant to be an all-exhaustive discussion of every single thing you need to take into account. There are resources out there. The FBI has resources out there and everything for more digging, investigation into what should be done. If anything, I think the goal of our episode today was just kind of to whet the appetite and to stress the importance of why you need to have a plan, whether you're a church, whether you're a business, no matter what soft target you may be. You've got to have a plan. These incidents are real. They're happening with more frequency. And every single person on this panel, I think, will vouch for the fact that, yes, it can happen in your backyard because it's happened in ours. And understand, when I say that it's happened nearby us, the first one that was about a year ago was literally on, just down the road from us. It was not that far from where we are all sitting right now. And if you were to come to Trinity, and if you haven't come to Trinity, hey, by the way, please, visitors welcome. Please come to Trinity. But if you haven't been here, I guarantee you, we're surrounded by farmland. You would not think that this is an area that would be in that close proximity where something like this could happen, and it does. So it can come to you. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you both coming on the show. Hopefully we've done a little bit of good here. And thank you all for watching. Do me a favor, if you did like this episode, go ahead and click the like button. That's a thumbs up button right here on the YouTube page. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Obviously, today's episode was a little bit more serious in tone. We've got more episodes like this. We've got some fun episodes of this talk show we've done over the past year and a half. And we've got some kind of deep theological episodes we've done too. It's a wide variety. And a lot of other shows on the channel here as well. 7 regular programs we put on here. So I guarantee you there's something there for everybody, including kids. Don't forget Jake and Gracie, Saturday mornings at 7 a.m. That's the one commercial I'll do. So also do me a favor, share this episode, this especially. I know I say that every week, but if you know any clergy, for example, any business owners, people that really are on the management level that would be the ones making the decisions about strategizing for a plan, getting their employees or their congregation informed of what to do, please make sure they get to see this to kind of impress upon them the importance of this issue. We really appreciate it. We do have a Facebook page here, the Trinity Joppa channel Facebook page. Go ahead and give that a like if you don't mind. We put things on there as far as what we got, some behind-the-scenes stuff, what we got coming up in the future, and we take feedback. Some of the shows we've done have been as a result of people giving us feedback on that Facebook page about what they'd like to see. So please feel free to contribute and comment on there as well. Next week, we start our next week is our special episode on Halloween, actually. We've got, next week is Halloween, and Ben Lander, who has never been on the show before, I say sarcastically, is going to be joining me, and we're going to be doing one of these topics I'd like to call, let's see how many comments, and see if we can balance out the likes and dislikes, because I know it's a hot button issue. We're going to be talking about should Christians be celebrating Halloween. So that's going to be a fun one. So make sure you join us here next week. Thank you to both of our panel members for this week. I think it was one of the most important episodes we've done, so I really appreciate it. All right. And thank you all for watching. God bless.
In your word we will follow.
Hey, if you haven't joined our Patreon yet, would you mind giving it your prayerful consideration? Patreon is a way you can support the Trinity Joppa YouTube channel. We've got multiple tiers to choose from, starting as low as $2 per month. Visit www.patreon.com/TrinityJoppa for all the details. Thank you. God bless.